extraordinary way to spend the day, particularly at a time that is pretty tumultuous in our nation and around the world. I just want to thank you, Amplify her, for this extraordinary honor, the Glass Breakers Award, and to be in this room with so many extraordinary, can I say badass change makers? Thank you. I thought I felt comfortable saying that with you. You are working so tirelessly to break barriers for women and girls here in New York, around our country, and it is sending ripples around the world. And I cannot think of a better way to celebrate the International Day of the Girl than being right here with all of you. So thank you so much. Amplify her truly embodies the spirit of this day, recognizing the power and the potential of every woman and girl. I had the good fortune of being raised by two parents who loved me unconditionally. They set high expectations for me, not in terms of occupation or title, but rather in terms of my values. To be kind, to be honest, to do what you say you're going to do, to work hard, really, really hard, knowing it's not enough to break barriers and be the first if I was going to ever be satisfied being the only. That was not good enough. They raised me unshackled by the realities of two Black people growing up during the Jim Crow era, my father from DC, my mother from Chicago, where opportunities for women and Black people, let's face it, were far more limited than they are today. But rather they provided me with a sturdy safety net that enabled me to be free to dream without limits, to experiment, to take chances, to take risks, to discover the power and the strength of my own voice to be a mighty force for good. That's what they gave me, and don't you think every girl deserves that? In my young adulthood, I became a single mom. And I don't know about those of you who are moms in this room, but I felt like I was holding on by my fingertips, and I only had one child. I thought if I just worked harder, if I was just smarter, if I was more organized, more efficient, slept fewer hours, maybe it wouldn't all be so hard. The mighty juggle, as my mom called it, was overwhelming. And I had a good paying job. I had health insurance. I had a supportive family. I had reliable childcare that I could afford. So I often wondered if it was so hard for me, first of all, why? And second of all, what must it be like for all those women like Giselle, who were holding on by a thread, with no safety net, women who could not rely on a steady paycheck, who had unpredictable and unaffordable childcare, and who went through life without health insurance. This is what motivated me to do my part to address the legal, the structural, and the cultural impediments, and to keep so many women and so many girls from reaching their dreams. And that's exactly what you do right here. Listening to the names and the organizations of the grantees, my goodness, could we give them all one more round of applause. It's these efforts and their hard work that show what we all know. Investing in women and girls is an investment in every family. Talent is ubiquitous, but we know opportunity is simply not. When girls grow up with the same opportunities that I had, the world will be a better place. At the beginning of my career, I practiced law in the private sector for 6 years. Miserable. It took me 6 years to listen to the most important voice, and that is a quiet one inside of each of us. And it is what motivated me to join local government in Chicago. It was there that I discovered my passion for public service and becoming a part of something bigger and much more important than myself. And I began to thrive, largely because of a very special woman who I looked up to as a role model and who took me under her wing and became my mentor, Lucille Dobbins. I always like to name her. She changed my life, and she gave me this incredible opportunity. And I knew when I had the chance, I wanted to do the same. And so one day, back 33 years ago, when a young woman named Michelle Robinson walked into, yes, you know, she now has another name, former First Lady Michelle Obama. But back, right? Yes, you can give her a round of applause. She walked into my office, and she was only 27, but she was pretty confident. She shook my hand, she looked at me, she saw her resume, never mentioned anything on it at all. She told me her story, which you guys now all know is a quintessential American story. Growing up with working class parents who hadn't been to college, believed in excellence and hard work, and wanted to raise both Michelle and her brother Craig to lead purposeful lives. But she told me that it wasn't until her father and her best friend had died within the prior year that she realized that her life was not purposeful and she wasn't maximizing her potential. Well, she bowled me over, and I thought, well, you can have a job right on the spot, and let me do for you what Lucille did for me. And she paused and said, well, let me get back to you. Smart. Like I thought we bonded. What happened here? Gets worse. A couple of days later, I called her and I said, well, what about that job offer? And she says, well, I got bad history. My fiance doesn't think it's a good idea. I'm like, well, who's your fiance? Why do we care what he thinks? I'm offering you the job. She laughed just like you're doing, and she said, well, we make these decisions together. Would you have dinner with us? Quite wisely in retrospect, I said yes. And, well, the rest is history. So, during my time as a CEO, I said I would be committed to doing just what Lucille had done for me and what I had tried to do for Michelle and countless other women, and that is to remove the barriers that kept them from thriving, oftentimes in fields that were male-dominated. And then, during the 8 years I had the extraordinary privilege of working for Michelle's husband in the White House as a senior advisor, the longest serving senior advisor in history. Just as importantly, chairing the White House Council on Women and Girls. And then those of you who weren't aware of the work we did at Anna, thank you for that wonderful shout out. I still remember when you walked into my office with your amazing colleagues leading women's foundations, and I'm so proud of all that you have done. And yes, that team, well, our council was devoted to ensuring that in all of our programs and all of our policies and all of the legislation we supported, we thought first about whether or not it would improve the lives of women and girls. And that was the lens through which we looked at our work. And President Obama created the first ever council made up of every agency in the federal government to focus on improving the lives of women and girls. And we've developed policies, as you heard in my introduction, everything from advocating for education, equal education for everyone, beginning with early childhood education, raising the minimum wage, ensuring equal pay, promoting workplace flexibility, advocating for laws and for a culture that did not tolerate discrimination, did not tolerate sexual violence or harassment in the workplace, and provided affordable child care and preventive care for women, because we know if it's a choice between us and our families, we take care of our families. And thanks to the Affordable Care Act, we get our preventive care without a copay.